Alright, so Outlaw is now available in a creator's event for A coins, which is amazing. But the question is, should you spin for Outlaw or save for mechs like Deathwalker or Citadel, which is a question that a lot of you guys have been asking. So, if you have 7,000 A coins, then definitely dump every single A coin into the ECR and get the Outlaw, because Outlaw is a top 3 mech in the current meta. And why is that? Well, it all comes down to its ability, the foul play, where you can system crash an enemy through walls from 130 meters away, including the implant, which is insanely powerful. Like, I don't even need to explain why is it that OP. And some people might say that, like, isn't Outlaw only useful for countering Deathwalkers? Well, not exactly. Although this used to be the case back in the day when Walkers were more common, system crash wasn't that useful back in the day. But however, now Walkers aren't that common anymore, and more meta mechs rely on their abilities being active. Mechs like Citadel requires its shield and force field to be active in order to brawl with multiple enemies. Mechs like Blizzfrost needs its damage resistance to brawl with enemies, and mechs like Parasite and Deathwalker as far as it goes. So Outlaw can counter a lot of mechs. Mechs like Citadel, Blizzfrost. If you have guided weapons, you can counter even a lace swing with that. You can counter Deathwalker, you can counter a Hemlock with that through walls. You can counter a Parasite, and any type of shield-based ability like Block 1 or Aegis. The foul play radius will take those shields down as well. So Outlaw is like very overpowered. Any type of crowd control mech or any type of mech that is very aggressive or defensive, Outlaw will easily neutralize them from a distance, which is insanely broken. Especially in team play, this is a nightmare basically. If you do not have Seekers, you will not survive Outlaws, especially in like max level. People run like 3 to 4 Outlaws per team, and just imagine like multiple Outlaws sitting in the back. Like, it's just basically death. Like, you cannot do anything. It's not a matter of what can you do, it's that you cannot do basically anything, because like constantly getting crashed over and over again, you're just gonna die, like trying to rush for beacons and stuff. So this mech is just too insane basically, especially against weapons like burrow beams and charge rockets, right? Because the system crash, what it'll do against those weapons is it will deactivate burrow beams mid-fire, and it will also deactivate charge rockets speed boost, which is also very, very strong. Even though it's a temporary reset and weapons like this will reload relatively quickly, it is very good because especially in a contested fights, immediately deactivating someone's weapons just gives their teammates the upper hand there. So it is very useful in that. These are all the main reasons why Outlaw is a top tier mech and one of the must-have mechs, especially you're going higher levels. But all that being said, if you do not have 7,000 A coins to spin the entire creator shipment, then just skip the creator shipment. That's it. Like, skip it. I do not recommend gambling or trying your luck. It's not worth it. I personally recommend saving your A coins for other creator shipments like Deathwalker or Citadel if you want to. If you have all the A coins, definitely go for it. But if you don't have all the A coins, do not gamble and instead save your A coins for other ECR. Because instead of wasting your A coins and getting nothing, you might as well save the A coins for other ECRs and get something from there. And also a small note I want to make is that Outlaw and both Deathwalker should be the next 2 mechs to be for in-game currency, because recently they have released Mimicker, and when they release stuff for in-game currency, they follow the pattern of when the mech was released in the game itself. Since Mimicker was the first to be released in the game before Deathwalker and Outlaw, after Mimicker release, it's going to be Deathwalker, and then after that, it's going to be Outlaw. So they're going to be doing in that order, as you can see. I'll have a picture on screen so that way you can check what all the mechs coming up for in-game currency next. So Deathwalker is going to be the next one for in-game currency, and then after that, Outlaw. So even if you skip this creator shipment, you can still not worry too much about it, because Outlaw most likely will be in the Gear Hub in like 2 months, most likely, because it's going to take some time for them to release it. But it's most likely going to be for the A coins, both Deathwalker and Outlaw. So yeah, that's just a small note I like to leave there so that way people know that. Now that we described how disgusting Outlaw is, let's move on to weapon combinations. The Outlaw itself is one of those mechs where you can use a lot of weapons on it, like a variety of options, and make it work very well. So Outlaw has a lot of weapon options. but I'm just going to talk about the recommended option that you should use on your Outlaw. So these 5 weapons are very popular at max level: Hornets, Charge Rockets, Strike Rockets, Geminis, and Pod Guns. These 5 options are very popular at max level competitive, all for different reasons. A Hornets is very good for bypassing the mods and everything because of its venom damage perk, especially if you're facing mechs like Citadel, for example. With the double 16s, like mechs like those won't even dare to show their faces because one mag of double 16s is enough to kill like even Citadels, for example, because the venom damage is extremely high. Hornets. So yeah. Strike Rockets and Geminis pretty much serve the same purpose, although I would say Gemini is far better because it does more damage and it's a bit more range. And Gemini does require less implants than Strike Rockets do, but either way, both weapons serve the same purpose though. You sit behind cover without peeking, use your ability through walls, and easily pressure the enemy with constant guided spam, preventing them from exposing themselves. So it's very good for like neutralizing enemies, especially in most control point clashes. These are the optimized build that you want to run. Charge Rocket is more of like an aggressive build, I would say. If you're playing Hangar Showdown or like even team-based CPC maps with more open or close corridors, Charge Rockets on Outlaw will perform very well. You can get in and out of situations relatively quickly and easily do hit and runs. So it is very good for those kind of stuff. When it comes to the pod guns, it's pretty similar to Hornets, but I would say it's a bit worse than Hornets. Now keep in mind, these weapons right here are mostly like pay-to-win weapons and not a lot of free-to-play players have access to them. So I'm going to list some free-to-play options that you can use for Outlaw. So when it comes to those free-to-play options, I would recommend Savants. Savants are a very good option for Outlaw. They do very good damage and a very great weapon for demodding enemies. You're not going to be doing crazy damage with this weapon because Savants yet again suffers against mods a lot, but it's very good for getting rid of the Mortalier shields and Galvanicol with a single shot, and easily you can let your teammates deliver the finishing blow. So it's very strong in that regard. Disruptor Outlaw is one of a great Outlaw builds. I think it's a very underrated Outlaw build personally. I run Disruptors on Outlaw a lot in Hangar Showdown, and I can't tell you how many times like I kill mechs like Citadel or like even Surges very easily with this. It has very good shield piercing and very high damage output. The only thing that kills Disruptors is the range and projectile speed, so I would avoid Disruptors on Outlaw for pretty much any other game mode. For Hangar Showdown, definitely very strong. I definitely recommend. Storm Racks on Outlaw is another amazing combo, by the way. If you have the reload implant, that is. If you do not have the reload implant, you might as well be using something else. But if you do have the reload implant, definitely worth using. But do keep in mind, yet again, your Storm Racks do better work with mechs like Deathwalker and Lace Swing. So if you have your Storm Racks on those two mechs, I do not recommend you taking it off those two mechs and putting it on Outlaw. So I would still prioritize your Storm Racks on those two mechs first, primarily. So those are all the weapons that I recommend for Outlaw, but you can use other weapons like Burrow Beams as well. Burrow Beams work pretty well, and most assault weapons like Vipers and Overdrivers can work fine for early to mid-game phases. But generally, I would avoid sustained fire weapons in general because it forces the Outlaw out in the open where it's going to be taking a lot of damage, which will limit its survivability. As an Outlaw user, you primarily want to stay alive as much as possible so you can do as much damage to the enemy team as much as possible. So that's what you want to do. So I don't recommend sustained fire weapons on Outlaw, even though you could use them and do relatively well. I don't recommend it personally. When it comes to implant options, one small note I want to make is for any Outlaw build, you want to go with range and cooldown. For any Outlaw build, you want to go with range and cooldown. Because both implants are very powerful and make Outlaw like the most annoying thing ever. The range is just that so you can reach enemies far away than 100 meters. The base range is 100 meters. With a max legendary range implant, you can get that to 130 meters. But I would say the legendary one is not important yet again. It is an extra 7 meters from the epic implant, so I would just get the epic implant and save your A coins. Unless you're max level competitive, you do not need the legendary implant. You can get an epic one and do relatively fine. The range is very crucial in most CPC and 5v5 maps because most enemies will be sitting back with like guided or something, and most Deathwalkers will put their spawn point a bit further away. So it is recommended to have the range implant at all times in most maps. Definitely be very useful, especially if you have Seeker teammates. Seeker and Outlaw pair very well together. So if you have the range implant, it's going to be very useful for teammates that have a Seeker, because you can crash enemies while your Seeker teammates just go and get rid of them. So it is very useful to have the range implant. The cooldown is pretty obvious. It reduces the cooldown. And one of the main points is that the cooldown is 15 seconds, which is very long. But with the cooldown implant, you can get that to 10 seconds, which means you can constantly keep crashing enemies over and over again, which makes Outlaw very annoying. So even mechs that have quicker cooldowns, like a 7-second or 5-second cooldown, Outlaw will get its ability back relatively quickly with the cooldown implant. So you can keep neutralizing enemies with that. So it is very, very useful. So yeah, I recommend having both of these implants on. It doesn't really matter if you get an epic one or legendary one, both implants are fine, personally. So yeah, that's it for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know, did you get Outlaw or not, and what weapons you're running on it, and whether it's performing well or not in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one.